There are many things that can go wrong in deep space. Your hyperdrive might decide today's the day it wants to be a toaster. Your lead xenobiologist might elope with a sentient cloud of gas. Or, if you're really, truly unlucky, you might run into something that doesn't run away screaming when it sees you. This is the story of the last one. The Galactic Concord's flagship, the pride and polished chrome ego of the entire species-spanning Federation, was a behemoth of technological arrogance called the Solar Justice. Over 1,000 glow sticks long, loaded with more guns than sense, and staffed by a hand-picked crew of the most decorated, most obedient, and most photogenic officers in the Concord. The Solar Justice was supposed to represent peace, security, and just enough intimidation to convince smaller civilizations to negotiate peacefully at gunpoint. Naturally, it vanished. 50 rotations ago. Yes, 50, on what should have been a routine patrol on the edge of wild space. The Solar Justice sent out one final, charmingly ominous message. Unidentified vessel detected. Moving in to seize and investigate. And then, nothing. No follow-up. No false alarm. It was a vending machine. Just void. Concord Command did what all-powerful bureaucracies do in times of mild panic. They pretended everything was fine and formed a committee. The committee then launched a dozen search and rescue fleets with all the urgency of a tax audit. They scanned nearby systems, debris fields, weird gravitational anomalies, and even the local fast food nebula. Nothing. Not even a scorched escape pod or the classic final act of a doomed crew. A shaky log entry ending with a scream and static. Eventually, the Federation had no choice but to declare the Solar Justice, and its crew of 500 officially lost to space, which is a diplomatic way of saying, we have no idea what the hell just happened and we'd rather not talk about it anymore. That should have been the end of it. Except, 5 rotations ago, a lone scout ship, some underfunded little thing barely held together with duct tape and optimism, pinged a derelict escape pod drifting 50 light-years in the wrong direction. The pod was from the Solar Justice. Its occupant? 1-1. Very malnourished, very traumatized Commander Flarb, the ship's first officer and apparent sole survivor. Flarb was in stasis, presumably to preserve oxygen, sanity, or both. The scout ship's crew defrosted him and took him to Outpost Varnock 3, where he was handed over to General Thress, an aging Concord officer who had just started enjoying retirement planning and decaf synth coffee. The general expected a debrief. He got a mental breakdown. Flarb wouldn't speak. Not wouldn't as in stubborn, but wouldn't as in his pupils dilated whenever someone mentioned the word doc. He flinched at shadows. He wept when he saw a spoon. The only word he muttered was something about the symbol. No one knew what that meant, but it was written down in a folder labeled definitely important, possibly doom. 4 rotations, Commander Flarb remained emotionally inert, nervously sipping broth and staring at corners as if they might bite him. And then, on rotation 155, he spoke. General Thress, an optimist at heart, read, gullible, decided to record the debrief. The room was sealed, the lights dimmed, and an analyst sat beside the general with a data recorder ready. They were going to finally unravel the mystery of the Federation's greatest embarrassment. State your name and the date for the record, the analyst began. Flarb blinked twice, coughed once, and leaned into the microphone like it might bite. The date was rotation 105, he said, voice trembling like a leaf in a hurricane. Year 1011, Concord calendar. We had detected a small vessel of unknown configuration. Define small, a general asked. 50 glow sticks long. Pause. Look of disbelief. The Solar Justice was over 1,000 glow sticks long, the general deadpanned. I know, Flarb whispered. It fit in our cargo bay. He continued, with a haunted look in his eye and a tone reserved for people who have seen the end times and didn't enjoy the visuals. We went in to seize and investigate. Standard protocol. Disable, dock, dissect, debrief, release. We never make a mess. Except this time, the damn thing shot back. That got the general's attention. Shot back. With weapons that shouldn't exist on something that size. It had the maneuverability of a flea on caffeine and the firepower of a destroyer. It shouldn't have been possible. The general looked at the analyst. The analyst looked at the general. They both looked at Flarb like he'd just announced that the ship had been eaten by space unicorns. But Flarb continued. We managed to disable it, barely, and dragged it into the hangar. Boarding team went in. Took longer than usual to cut through the hull. Doors were reinforced. Like, not accidentally strong, intentionally scary. The first boarding team disappeared. No gunfire. No screaming. Just radio silence. They sent another. Same story. Eventually, the bridge crew was watching body cams like a horror movie. One by one, the feeds cut out. No noise. Just that feeling, you know the one, when you're being watched. By something that doesn't blink. And then they saw it. 2 legs. Walked upright. Black armor. Pink tan skin. Eyes like polished ice and concentrated judgment. The general stiffened. Forward-facing eyes? Flarb nodded. Apex predator eyes. The entire room suddenly felt a little colder. They tried to react. Tried to secure the ship. But the alien ship powered itself back on, from inside their own hangar, and opened fire. It exploded, crippling half the Solar Justice in seconds. Commander Flarb escaped with his life. Barely, but he didn't leave unscarred. They knew our language, he said. What? The biped? One of them, it grabbed me before I got into the escape pod. Looked me in the eye and said, tell your superiors it won't happen again. Then it shoved me into the pod and launched it. General Thress blinked. So they let you live? Sir Flarb said, now visibly trembling. They let me go to deliver a message. And it wasn't a warning. It was a promise. He paused, and I think we accidentally killed some of them during the attack. The room went silent. Sir, Flarb added, they're not angry. He leaned forward. They're coming. The Galactic Concord, bless their bureaucratic, galaxy policing hearts, had a saying, if it's smaller than your shuttle and hasn't announced its intent, it's probably harmless. That saying died screaming in Hangar Bay 3. Let's rewind. After Solar Justice, the flagship of the Concord nearly got turned into scrap by a ship the size of a dorm room fridge. The crew managed to disable the mystery vessel. And by disable, we mean they hurled everything short of a small moon at it until the lights flickered. And even then, they weren't sure. But this was standard protocol. The mighty Solar Justice had hauled in hundreds of alien ships over the years. Pirates, smugglers, confused tourists. A ship that small? It was supposed to be a cakewalk. Blast it. Board it. Poke around until something valuable beeps. Maybe detain a confused life form or two who speak in clicks or interpretive dance. Then release it back into the wild with a strong warning and some smug documentation. Except this time, the cake was sentient, heavily armed, and baked with an extra dose of go screw yourself. Commander Flarb, now in full trauma dump mode, recounted it all to General Thress with the 1,000-yard stare of someone who's seen their Wi-Fi router blink red for a week straight. It took far too long to breach the hull, Flarb said, voice low. It was like the damn thing knew we'd try to get in. That should have been the first red flag. But Concord engineers, ever the optimists, chalked it up to abnormal metallurgical density, which is Concord speak for it's probably fine. Spoiler, it was not fine. Eventually, they managed to crack the hatch. A fully equipped breach team stepped inside. These weren't rookies, they were trained professionals. Veterans. Decorated. Highly paid. They lasted 5 minutes. The first feed cut out without a sound. No explosion. No weapon discharge. Just poof. Gone. The room they entered was empty, dark, and as welcoming as a haunted basement. So naturally, Concord Command sent another soldier after them. Same result. At this point, on the bridge, Flarb and the captain were glued to the feeds like horror movie victims too dumb to turn off the television. One by one, the soldiers vanished into that cursed interior. No alarms. No movement. Just silence. Then everything lit up. The whole damn ship powered on, Flarb muttered, his face pale. It woke up. Flashbang. Active. Doors sealed. Security systems. Hijacked. Before anyone could scream retroactive diplomacy, the ship's interior erupted with motion. The feeds were chaos. Shrieks, gunfire, static, then darkness. Only one camera held long enough to record the impossible, a humanoid. Upright posture. Black armor. Compact. Efficient. Pinkish tan skin. And eyes. The eyes were wrong, Flarb said. Forward-facing. Cold. Calculating. Not prey eyes. Predator eyes. Let's take a moment to appreciate the cosmic irony. For centuries, the Concord had used forward-facing eyes as a biological red flag. It was a quiet rule among empires. The moment a new species with that evolutionary trait developed spaceflight, you monitored them. Maybe you isolated them, but you never invited them to the party. Humans had not been invited. What followed wasn't war. It was surgery, precision strikes, stealth, sabotage. The humans, yes, let's drop the pretense, weren't caught. They allowed themselves to be boarded. They waited until they were dragged into the hangar. They let the Concord open the doors. And then they cleaned house. They didn't flee. They moved in, Flarb whispered. The ship's explosion wasn't a final act of defiance. It was a diversion. As the vessel's core detonated, destroying communications, FTL drives, and about half of Hangar Bay 3, 5 humans used the chaos to slip into the Solar Justice. The flagship, home to over 500 trained personnel, 1 billion credits of military tech, and apparently 0 internal cameras on Deck 5. That's where they went. Deck 5, the one with the mainframe, the weapons cache, and the entire galactic database. We thought we had disabled their ship, Flarb said. Turns out, we had just unlocked their front door. The next few hours were what historians would later refer to as the gentle beginning of the end. Tools started vanishing. Data rods misplaced. Crew lockers opened and resealed. Small things easily dismissed. The ship's main computer slowed by 2%. Everyone blamed the repairs. Then life support started acting funny. Oxygen dropped. Carbon dioxide rose. Helium was swapped out for something oddly nitrogen-heavy. When they corrected it, the system simply reverted. Over and over again. At first, they thought it was a bug. Then someone tried a hard reboot. The readings came back normal. Until someone noticed that the air didn't change. The computer was lying. That's when panic really set in. We realized the ship wasn't under our control anymore, Flarb muttered. And worse, the invaders weren't even trying to hide it. Once the FTL came back online, the captain ordered an emergency jump to the nearest outpost. They ended up going in the opposite direction. On purpose. The humans were now in full control of the navigation systems, of communications, of life support, of everything. And they were quietly downloading every classified file the Federation had ever filed under Definitely Not for the Apes. Cultural indices, military movements, species profiles, psychological warfare tactics, all of it, vacuumed into one directory, stored on Deck 5. Captain's orders were swift: cleanse Deck 5, kill or capture. They didn't even make it to the elevator. The humans had anticipated that too. Ambush. Perfect. Brutal. Clinical. Within minutes, Deck 5 belonged to the humans. Then Deck 6. Then 7. Then the lights started going out level by level, and the crew finally admitted the truth. The flagship was no longer theirs. That's when the captain gave the order, Flarb said. Abandon ship. Nice idea. But the humans had something to say about that too. Escape pods were blocked. Hallways sealed. One by one, the humans herded the crew like cattle through the corridors. Except cattle don't usually get knocked out by a single hit from a non-lethal weapon. Only Flarb made it. Barely. And not because he was lucky, because they let him go. Just before launching the escape pod, one of them grabbed him, pinned him to the wall, looked into his soul with those pale, blue-ringed eyes, and spoke in flawless Concordese. Tell your superiors, this won't happen again. And that was that. Commander Flarb, first officer of the Concord's finest ship, was sent back to deliver the message. And the message was clear. You can't poke the zoo. Now the zookeeper is coming to poke back. The Federation had a doctrine. Not quite a law, more like a smug, philosophical shrug. Advanced civilizations don't need to apologize. They're advanced. That policy, alongside its bloated cousin standard seize and investigate, had guided the Galactic Concord for centuries. Diplomacy through superiority. Peace through preemptive looting. And when you're the biggest fish in the known galaxy, no one really stops to ask if maybe, just maybe, Kidnapping strangers and rummaging through their glove compartments isn't the best idea. Then came the humans. Oh, the humans. Let's recap. The Concord's finest vessel, Solar Justice, had been hijacked by 5 humans. 5. Not an army. Not a fleet. Just 5 space raccoons in body armor, high on adrenaline and vengeance, who were now operating like invasive code in a system that hadn't updated its antivirus since the Korglak's rebellion. And the best part? Nobody knew where they came from. Flarb, the only survivor, sat across from General Thress, having just finished his emotionally unhinged TED Talk about how everything went from routine scan to our flagship is now a haunted house full of apex bipeds. He wasn't asking for help. He was just trying not to cry again. And Thress? He believed him. The eyes, the tactics, the precision, the contempt. This wasn't a random pirate raid. This was a message, a show of force, a warning shot disguised as a surgical takeover. So naturally, Thress did what any respectable Federation general does when facing annihilation. He panicked responsibly. Full mobilization, he barked a command. Retool every peacekeeping ship for wartime deployment. Wake the reserves. I want every planet garrisoned and every orbital defense array online yesterday. His staff scrambled. They knew better than to ask questions when the general's coffee was still steaming and someone had just uttered the phrase forward-facing eyes. But there was a problem. Sir, what do we mobilize to? An assistant asked. And there it was. The most important question. The one that shattered the illusion of control. Because here's what they knew about the humans. Bipedal. Highly coordinated. Technologically disruptive. Killers of 1,000 trained Concord crew. Fluent in Concordese because of course they were. Operate tiny ships like they're performance artists doing knife tricks. Use explosions as opening acts. And that's it. No planet. No star system. No flag. No known allies. No known existence before the Solar Justice debacle. As far as the Federation's entire database was concerned, humans were a ghost species. One that just hijacked their flagship and downloaded their greatest secrets before disappearing into the void like a bad review on a propaganda channel. It gets better. Thress, fueled by spite and a complete lack of caffeine, tried to launch a preemptive strike anyway. Somewhere. Anywhere. He demanded updates. Patterns. Hidden signals. But the galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. Until rotation 158. Thress was just clocking out, dreaming of a rare evening where no one said, "Sir, we have a situation," when someone said exactly that. "Sir," an ensign stammered, "we've detected a fleet." A fleet. 12 ships. Unknown configuration. High velocity. Coming straight for them. Distance? Thress asked. 2 light years. ETA? 3 hours. He paused. That same cold dread gripped him, like someone had dumped liquid nitrogen down his spine and whispered, "Run." Symbol? He asked. "One match, sir." File classified. Thress didn't even blink. He walked to the console, input his command code, and pulled up the image. There it was. The symbol. The one carved into the side of that first mystery ship. The one Flarb had sketched with a trembling hand. The one that had become synonymous with "you're screwed." 12 ships, each one bearing that symbol like a royal seal. A warning, a flag, a signature. Not that anyone knew what it meant. But that didn't matter anymore. Because whatever it meant, it was coming. The command center went into full panic mode. Encryption protocols failed. Communication scrambled. Systems jammed. Thress barely had time to mutter, send a warning to high command before a comms officer turned and deadpanned. "Sir, we're being jammed." Perfect. He stared at the screen, at the glowing vector of approaching ships. His officers waited for orders. But Thress was frozen. This wasn't a drill. This wasn't a war game. This was retribution. Meanwhile, back at Federation High Command, a dozen admirals were busy writing reports titled "How to Maintain Peace After Accidentally Invading a Predator Species." Spoiler, there is no peaceful follow-up to that. The intel from Flarb's debrief had triggered every red flag the Federation's war doctrine had pretended didn't exist. Forward-facing eyes? Check. Minimal verbal engagement? Check. Weaponry disguised as trash? Check. Ability to hijack a flagship using stealth, sabotage, And superior software? Big check. But still, some dismissed it. Sir, it was only 5 of them, one admiral scoffed. Right, said another, sipping smugly from his gravity-safe brandy. Surely they're not an actual civilization. Just a rogue cell. Thress's message, jammed, fragmented, and half digested by the time it arrived, wiped those smiles clean. 12 ships inbound, all bearing the Predator symbol. Comms jammed. They're not talking. They're not responding. And they're not stopping. The mood shifted like a gravity well collapsing. Because here's the real kicker. Nobody knew how many more ships there were. If 5 humans could hijack a flagship and disappear, what could 50 do? 500? 5,000? And more terrifying. What if those 12 ships weren't an invasion? What if they were just a recon team? Back at Thress's outpost, the general had composed himself, barely. He stood before his officers, finally answering the question they'd asked a dozen times. Sir, what do we do? He turned toward the screen. 12 red markers. One glowing symbol. He took a deep breath. We hold. And we hope. Hope for what? Someone whispered. Hope that whatever species we just punched in the face is in a forgiving mood. Because here's the truth they couldn't say out loud. They had poked a bear. A pink-skinned, armored, tech-savvy, multilingual apex bear. And now the bear had their scent. There's a particular moment when every galactic power, no matter how smug, resource-rich, or diplomatically delusional, realizes the difference between being in control and being in the way. For the Galactic Concord, that moment had arrived, right on time at rotation 158. 12 ships, unknown configuration, moving fast, no response to hails, no declaration of intent, and no conveniently terrified translator asking for asylum. Instead, just the same symbol burned into the hull of every ship, the one Commander Flarv had hand-sketched while shaking like a defective gyroscope, the one that, until now, had been dismissed as cultural graffiti. General Thress didn't think it was graffiti. He thought it was a signature. And now that signature had shown up 12 times, in formation, with enough raw power on sensor scans to vaporize the entire outpost, and then casually reverse park into orbit. Sir, should we initiate first contact protocol? One of his junior officers asked, clearly still operating under the hopeful fantasy that first contact was even an option. Thress didn't answer. Because first contact requires at least the illusion that you're meeting equals. These ships didn't act like they were here to meet anyone. They flew like predators, silent, direct, and disturbingly unconcerned with all the firepower pointed at them. Let's rewind the clock 48 hours back to High Command. After Flarv's full debrief had been classified, reclassified, and then immediately leaked to everyone with a security clearance above janitorial drone, there was panic. Quiet panic, of course. The Concord was far too dignified for anything else. Admirals reviewed the data. Counselors proposed a cultural outreach initiative. One genius in the Office of Interstellar Peace suggested sending an apology cake. Shaped like what exactly? A war crime? But the data was clear. The humans had infiltrated the flagship, downloaded everything they could get their primate paws on, and disappeared like ghosts. And now 12 ships were inbound. Likely their answer to please disregard our accidental act of hostile dissection. And still, some officials clung to the fantasy. They're responding aggressively to perceived provocation, said Minister Kaluz, who had spent the last 30 years defining the word perceived to mean literally anything we do. We should open dialogue. Offer reparations. We don't even know what they call themselves, one general snapped. We don't have coordinates, language profiles, or even a basic understanding of their political structure. Well then, Kaluz sniffed, perhaps they're not a civilization at all. At that exact moment, someone wheeled in footage from the Solar Justice. Bodycam clips, surveillance feeds, strategic takeovers, precision ambushes, weapon systems activated mid-breath. No chanting, no gloating, just efficiency. Predators who'd studied their prey before the first strike. Minister Kaluz stopped talking. Back on Outpost Varnock 3, General Thress stared at the incoming blips on the tactical display. The humans were almost here. The outpost defense systems were online, shields humming, weapons locked. And no one, not one person, believed it would matter. The censor officer muttered under his breath. Why 12? Why not 50? Why not 1? What was the significance of 12? No one knew. But then again, no one had known anything about these humans except that 5 of them had brought the Concord to its knees like they were knocking over a chessboard out of boredom. And now there were 12 ships. Sir, the comms officer cut in. We're being jammed. Of course they were. It wasn't just silence. It was intentional silence. The kind of silence that comes just before the end of a sentence. We're a species. Orders, sir? His second-in-command asked. Thress didn't answer immediately. He was watching the tactical screen. The humans weren't rushing. They weren't zigzagging evasively. They weren't even powering weapons. They were just flying straight toward the outpost like they'd already bought the place and were here to collect keys. At exactly 2:02 local time, the first of the human ships dropped out of FTL. It didn't decloak with a dramatic musical sting. It didn't fire a warning shot. It just appeared. Jet black, matte armor. No visible engine trails. Smooth, angular design that looked like it had been built to confuse sensors and terrify architects. Then another, and another, until all 12 ships formed a perfect ring around the outpost, each equidistant from the surface, each in silent, predatory orbit. The Concord's defense systems locked on. Nothing happened. Weapons still cold, muttered the tactical officer. Sir, what if this is a demonstration? Someone whispered. Demonstration of what? That they can erase us without needing to fire. Thress finally spoke. Patch me into the main channel. If they're listening, maybe they'll answer. The bridge fell silent. The general stood tall, staring at the central holoscreen, and spoke with a voice that sounded calm, but carried all the desperation of a drowning man reading a map. Unknown vessels. This is General Thress of the Galactic Concord. We acknowledge prior hostile action against your people. It was not intended as a declaration of war. We seek to communicate. We seek to understand. We are prepared to offer reparations. Knowledge. Territory. Whatever is necessary to prevent further conflict. The message was sent. And for a moment, just a breath, there was silence. Then, the screen flickered. A face appeared. Pink-tan skin. Forward-facing eyes. Black armor. Calm expression. It was the same kind of creature from Flard's feed. A human. But this one was sitting. Relaxed. Leg crossed. Holding what appeared to be a steaming mug. He took a slow sip, then leaned forward. Message received. Pause. You poked us. We poke back. Another sip. Now you've seen what 5 of us can do. A beat. This is 12. The camera zoomed out slightly. Behind him, a hangar full of similar humans, armored, armed, some sharpening knives, others laughing over datapads. We didn't come to destroy your outpost. Pause. We came to return the favor. But this time, we want a proper introduction. Another beat. Tell your leadership to stop poking things it doesn't understand. The screen cut to black. No explosions. No immediate attacks. No fireworks. Just silence. And 12 warships orbiting calmly. Waiting. Thress turned to his officers. No one spoke. Then, finally someone asked, What do we do? Thress looked back at the symbol now etched into every sensor feed, every tactical map, every report. It didn't matter what it meant, because it now meant one thing only. You brought this on yourselves. The Galactic Concord once believed that true power was measured in fleet size, territory maps, and diplomatic seating arrangements. They held symposiums on peace enforcement and published quarterly reports filled with words like deterrence, stability, and justified annexation. Then they met humans, and humans, as it turned out, measured power differently. More like, how many systems can we take down before lunch? 12 human ships hovered in perfect formation above Outpost Varnock 3. They hadn't fired. They hadn't moved. They hadn't even turned on exterior lights. They just existed, silent, shadowed titans with the smug energy of apex predators on a nature documentary. Inside the outpost, General Thress had stopped pretending he had any control over the situation. He stood at the center of the command deck, staring at the tactical screen like it might start crying too. Any movement? He asked for the 4th time in an hour. Negative, sir, the ensign replied, visibly sweating. Still just orbiting. Just orbiting. Just waiting. The worst kind of psychological warfare, the polite kind. And then, without warning, every external feed lit up. The 12 human ships activated hull projectors. One by one, they lit with glowing text, translated automatically by Concord systems into terrifying simplicity. We're still being nice. You know it's bad when even the threat display sounds like a condescending smile. Sir, another officer said, should we initiate countermeasures? You want to poke them again? Thress snapped. At this point, I wouldn't be surprised if our nukes just turned into fireworks mid-flight. And honestly, that's not even exaggeration. Because deep within the outpost systems, things were changing. Not exploding, just shifting. Files were recategorized. Weapon systems subtly decoupled from the main grid. Surveillance logs rewritten to include helpful new labels like pointless security camera number 6 and stop staring. We see you too. It wasn't sabotage. It was a takeover tutorial. 3 hours into the standoff, a single encrypted transmission was received. Origin, unknown. Format, elegant. Content, clinical. The message read, to the Galactic Concord High Command. This is a follow-up to your previous seizure protocol, enacted without consent or context. The incident aboard your vessel designated Solar Justice has been logged. Your actions have been interpreted as unprovoked aggression and technologically invasive behavior. You are now considered hostile, but primitive. You will be left alone. Do not approach our vessels again. Do not pursue our origins. Do not run simulations. Do not send cake. This is your one and only warning. Any future violations will be answered with finality. Humanity. There was no reply option. There was no return address. Just a digital stamp at the bottom, matching the now infamous symbol etched into every ship. A simple, stylized hand raised in a flat palm. It looked almost friendly, until you realized it was the universal human symbol for stop, right? There, across the galaxy, Concord leadership met in emergency sessions. Admirals argued. Ministers panicked. Peacekeepers reviewed every file containing the words First Contact Protocol and threw half of them into the nearest sun. No one wanted to admit it aloud, but the truth hung in the air like the scent of burnt ozone. The humans had let them live. The fleet above Varnock, 3 wasn't there to invade. It was there to demonstrate. And just when High Command thought the show was over, Act 2 began. At exactly 6 o'clock ship time, the lead human vessel, designation unknown, but later nicknamed Disappointment Generator by panicked Concord analysts, descended slowly. No weapons charged. No shields raised. Just a calm, deliberate drift toward the surface. General Thress ordered all weapons locked. Then, realizing that meant nothing, he ordered tea instead. Sir, should we issue a final warning? The comms officer asked. We did, Thress said. It was when we kidnapped their people, dissected their ship, and then tried to nuke them. The human ship landed in the outpost's central docking bay like it had booked the space 3 months ago and had every permit in triplicate. The hatch opened. Out walked 5 humans. 2 in armor, 1 in civilian clothes, 1 in what appeared to be a bathrobe. And the last, the one in the lead, she wore no armor, no helmet, just a black jacket with a strange earth animal on the back. A duck, holding a grenade. She looked around, then raised a hand. Hey, she said. We're here to chat. She said it like it was a customer service call. General Thress met them in the docking bay. He tried to look dignified, but it's hard to project confidence when the last time you met this species, they turned your flagship into a ghost ship. You're from Earth? He asked. Sure, the woman said. If you need a name for the rock we live on. But you really shouldn't call it. We won't answer. Why come here? Because we figured you'd misinterpret the warning. She smiled. It was not a comforting smile. You see, the last time someone tried to seize and investigate a human ship, we had no idea who you were. No idea what you wanted. Still wiped your most powerful ship off the map. Took your data. Studied your tech. Built counters. You got a head start. Now we have a lead. This isn't a war, Thress said carefully. Nope, she agreed. This is a cease and desist. With optional lasers. She tossed something onto the floor. A small cube. It beeped once, then projected a hologram of every Federation ship layout Every known Concord base, every weapon schematic, every emergency override code, updated. "We don't want a war," she said. "We want to be left alone. But if you force us to respond again, we won't stop at just one ship." Behind her, the rest of the humans stood quietly, watching, smiling, relaxed in the way only those who know they cannot lose are ever relaxed. "You made us come out here," she added. "We didn't want to. Now we know where you live. You don't know where we live." She stepped closer. "So here's the new rule. You leave us alone. We leave you functional. And if another Concord ship so much as sniffs a human signature in wild space again." She didn't finish the sentence. She just smiled again and turned back to her ship. As they boarded and the hatch sealed, one final message transmitted from the ship's side, projected in enormous letters visible across the entire outpost. "Last warning. Next time, we bring the duck." The human fleet departed 10 minutes later. No blasts, no dramatic exit, just a soft ping on the sensor grid as they winked out of existence. And in their place, silence. A deep, resounding, victorious silence. High Command met again 24 hours later. They voted 114-1 to abolish the seas and investigate protocol entirely. The one dissenter resigned. Later reports say he moved to a mining colony and now spends his days talking to rocks about humility. Outpost Varnock 3 was awarded a defensive medal for restraint under apex pressure, which Thress refused to accept. He instead published a memo titled, "Don't Poke Bears with Lasers, a cautionary guide to human diplomacy." Across the galaxy, ships were rerouted, scanners recalibrated, and one single symbol was quietly burned into the Federation's internal watch list. Not for targeting, but for avoidance. Because wherever that symbol went, only one truth followed. Humanity was here, and they were being nice. For now.